Hi, good evening. So thanks for coming along and joining me for my first YouTube video. It's going to be a little bit of a mundane opening, I'm afraid. It's going to this video goes into how I got into photography, where I started, shows you a few images and bits and pieces. I don't want to ruin it for you by going through everything now. So let's start the video and then I'll see you at the end. Okay, hello. I've been thinking about putting together a YouTube channel for quite a long time now, and I've gone through all the various excuses of why I can't do it, why I shouldn't do it, and what I need to do it. One of them being I haven't got the right equipment, and the other ones being, well, certainly one of them being when I tried shooting it in the office, that right lighting in the office is no good. So, brilliant weather, got a nice setting. I'm lucky to live on the edge of the Northmore National Park, so here we are sat in my garden this morning. Now, I decided that my first video would really be going back to talking about the beginning and, you know, and where my photography began. And what spurred me to do that really is because within the last sort of, I think something like 6 months, whatever it was, my father passed to me an old camera that used to belong to my grandfather, and a photograph as well that we found when we were looking through some old albums, which really intrigued me. So if we go right back to the beginning, I guess I have to go back and I have to start with this photograph. And the reason I have to start with this photograph is because there's three people in this photo that's really quite important and significant to the story. This gentleman here, stood at the back with a great smile on his face, is my grandfather. He's holding this camera. This is a Practica Super TL with its Hanimex lens on it. So we'll come back to that camera in a minute. So that's my grandfather. My father is sat down here in front of him. He's using a very similar camera, different lens on it, but he's using a camera as well. And there's a chap here in the pushchair looking down along the crowd line, wondering what's going on. And this guy is, well, that's me. I'm probably about, I would say about maybe 1-2 years old, probably more towards 1. So that's probably way back, 1973. So my photography began a long time ago. Wind forward now, about another sort of like 15 years, and to about 1987, and we end up on Plymouth Hoe in July taking pictures at the local air show. And the camera that I was using was this camera here. So you can see that this camera, picture, and me, we've all got quite a connection together. So that's how I really began my photography, and I started using this camera and haven't looked back since. Yes, I started taking pictures of aircraft, and continued to do that for a number of years, going through a whole wide range of different cameras until I got into some systems cameras, and I'm stuck with a few systems now. And but I also sort of started, like a lot of people do when they begin photography, photographing absolutely everything. And that's a good thing to do, isn't it? Because how do you know what it is you want to photograph until you actually start doing it? So I settled on enjoying taking pictures of aviation and aircraft, which I still enjoy doing today. But my other passions are also maybe sort of like outdoor and landscape photography. And that's for me because it's not just about the picture, it's about the experience, it's about going out and enjoying yourself in the outdoors. And it's a fantastic way to get away from the normal sort of trials of life and everything, shall we say, and get out and enjoy yourself. So that's what I do. This camera here, just thought I'd bring this one along. I'm not quite sure of what its history is, but I'm assuming it sort of belonged at some point to my grandfather, and he used this camera as well. I haven't used it myself. Maybe one day I need to get it refurbed and get some film and actually run it through and see what happens. You never know, it might be interesting. So I think the best thing to do now really is for us to sort of go indoors, go upstairs, have a look at some of the pictures that I'm taking. I just want to show you a couple of aviation pictures, a very old one, although it's not from the very beginning in 1987, it's a few years later. and a more recent one, and then show you a couple of landscape pictures as well to try and give you an idea of the type of things that I'm working on. So let's pick up this cup of coffee, and we'll go upstairs and yeah, and have a look at some images. Okay, so here we have the first image. This is sort of like typical of the type of images that I was taking at the time. Now this is a Tornado fighter bomber, sort of in its sort of RAF camouflage. In fact, I think this has got the 75th year anniversary colours on it. I was taking this sort of pictures down at sort of RAF St Morgan and local air shows. So this is the real where it all began. I like the sort of reheat coming out through the back against the sort of like dark trees. It's nice to see a bit of a stormy sky, and obviously the slow shutter speed has helped. And I think there was a little bit of digital sort of input to get that blur effect as well. But basically this is the sort of image that I was producing in the beginning with my photography. This next image is very similar again. It's also a tornado, and this is where I sort of like to do my photography now, so that as we're talking at the moment, you know, I'm thinking about going back to the Mac Loop in North Wales again next year, where you can do this sort of photography. Unfortunately, the tornado is no longer flying, but there's plenty of other jets to consider shooting. And this is where these aircraft were designed to be: low down, stormy skies, below the height of the mountains, avoiding radar so they can get in and strike their target. So it's nice to take pictures of aircraft in the environment in which they were designed to be operated. And opportunities like this don't really come up at air shows. You've got to make a little bit more of an effort and get into the training areas and low-level sortie sort of like zones where the RAF and the other air forces are operating. So I'll hopefully do more of this in the future. But my first love will always be landscape photography, and living inside the Dartmoor National Park gives me the opportunity to visit some favourite locations there quite a lot. This is one of those locations. I'm always attracted to water, especially moving water in my images, and I tend to like fairly classic sort of simple compositions, and if I can get a bit of texture and a bit of moving water, a little bit of contrast, a bit of a stormy sky in it, something a bit different, then I'm a really happy man. I do colour landscape photography, and I also sort of like do monochrome and a bit of sort of what I would say fine art, more sort of creative work as well. Another favourite location of mine on Dartmoor, if you're local, sort of like Dartmoor, if you're a local photographer, you'll probably know this location quite well. Once again, I said sort of like my preferred fallback would always be to try and produce a monochrome image. I like monochrome. It tends to simplify the image, and also sort of makes it a little bit easier sometimes to compose it. Without the complications of color, you can really just feature, you know, textures and structure and shape, form and compositions without over complicating things with color. Obviously color's got its place, you know, there's very little point shooting sunsets and such things in black and white, but monochrome is really where my heart sort of ends up. This image is sort of typical of my more sort of creative work that I like to produce, and this was just taken using a very slow shutter speed, looking down at some leaves on the edge of a bit of rapid moving water. My creative work is pretty much done in camera. There's a little bit of Photoshop work involved with all of my pictures, but this, you know, on this image here, it would have been no more than probably
you know, a crop, an adjustment of shadows, highlights, maybe a little bit of glow to it, just to sort of give it more of an ethereal feel. But this is the type of thing that I like doing. Also a little bit of intentional camera movement, and I guess now I have the facility to do so, maybe we'll start looking at a bit of multiple exposure at some time. But my creative work is really quite basic, and it still comes back to being all about the subject.
Okay, so hopefully that's given you a pretty good idea of what my photography is about and the type of things which I want to show you on this channel. Obviously the channel's not going to work unless I produce more content. I can't say when I'm going to be producing it. I can't say if it's going to be later this week. I can't say if it's going to be later this month or even next month, because I think this is going to take a little bit of effort on my part to get it going whilst holding down a full-time paying job, shall we say, as well. So from now I'm going to go away. I'm going to go and sort out what I'm going to be working on and try and come up with some more videos. There may be a live video out in the field. That's what I'd really like to get to, where I can take you on journeys out into the outdoors with me, or it might be just a video looking through some of more of my images and what I shoot and when I shoot them. So without further ado, thank you very much for watching this first video and this introduction to my photography. In the comments, you're going to see a number of links to my website, my Facebook page, my Instagram and Twitter as well, so that you can follow me on those. All I can ask of you guys, those of you that know me, subscribe to the channel, and hopefully that will sort of inspire me on to produce extra content for you, and we'll move forward from there. So bye for now. Thank you. Okay guys, so I hope you enjoyed watching that video. Next week's a little bit more exciting. I'm editing videos for next week's video already. I've been up on Dartmoor at dawn. So for now, stay safe, enjoy your photography, subscribe, comment on the video, and I'll see you next week.